Hello class, and welcome to today's lesson, which is about solving one-step equations. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to solve one-step equations. When we are solving these equations, we are going to be using inverse operations. So those are the two operations that undo each other. The first pair is addition and subtraction. Those are our opposites, and then multiplication and division are our other pair of opposites. So we're going to start with an addition equation. And we have 13 plus k is equal to 46. Our goal is to get the variable by itself. We want to eliminate anything on the side of the variable. In this case, that's the adding 13. So in order to get rid of adding, using that inverse, we're going to subtract 13. We have to think of equations as a balanced scale. If you drop the scale 13 spaces on one side, the equation is no longer balanced. So in order to balance that scale back out, I also have to do it on the other side of the equal sign. So whatever you do to the left side of the equal sign has to occur on the right side of the equal sign to keep the equation as actually being equal. 13 minus 13 is 0. Since 0 plus anything is just that number, I'm just going to have k. And then on the right side, I actually have some subtraction to do. So we have 46 minus 13, which is going to give me 33. You can always check your answer to any sort of equation by taking the value of your answer and plugging it back into the problem. So you could double check quickly by doing 13 plus 33. And that's going to give you 46. That statement is true, so we know that we have reached our correct answer. When we're looking at subtraction, same kind of idea. So x minus 77 is equal to 52. We want to get whatever's next to that x, to that variable, away. So in order to eliminate negative 77 or subtracting 77, I'm going to add 77 to both sides of my equation. Negative 77 and positive 77, again, cancel out to 0. So I'm left with just x. And then on my right side, I've got 52 plus 77, which is going to give me 129. Again, you could plug 129 back into the x spot and check by doing 129 minus 77, which does in fact give you 52. Moving on to the multiplication equations. In order to get rid of multiplication, we need to use division. One thing you really have to pay attention to with both multiplication and division equations is if the coefficient, the number in front of the variable, is positive or negative. If that value is negative, you need to divide, in this case, by not just 7, but negative 7. If I had forgotten the negative, negative 7 divided by positive 7 would have given me a negative u. We don't want to figure out the value of negative u. We want to figure out the value of positive u. So we need to make sure if it is multiplied by negative 7, we're dividing by that negative 7 because negative and a negative is a positive. 7 divided by 7 is going to give me 1. On the other side, I'm also going to need to divide by negative 7. So I've got u, or 1u, if you want to write that 1 in front of it, is equal to positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative. 357 divided by 7 is going to give me a negative 51 for my answer. Again, you could plug it back in, do negative 7 times negative 51, and you would get an answer of positive 357. When you are using division, you can show that two ways. The first one I just showed was using that division in fraction form. The other way that you can show the division is using that traditional division symbol with the line and the two dots. So if you wanted to show your work in the other way, you could say divided by negative 7, divided by negative 7, and you still would get an answer of u is equal to negative 51. So that part is just a notation thing if you want to use the fraction as your division symbol or if you want to use the actual dividing sign as your division symbol. When we have a division equation, so p divided by 8 is equal to 17, we are going to get rid of that division with multiplication. Again, there's a couple different ways you can show this multiplication. The first option is to just put it in parentheses next to the value. Multiplying by 8 and dividing by 8 cancels out to 1, so I've got just p. And then when I do 17 times 8, I'm going to end up with an answer of 136. Again, you could plug that back in and say p, which is 136 divided by 8. That will give you an answer of 17. The other way you can show your work with multiplication is to use that asterisk, that star symbol. So saying multiplying by 8 if you prefer to use that asterisk symbol. And again, that would cancel out to p is equal to 136. We want to avoid using the x as our multiplication sign because x is commonly used for a variable, and we don't want to confuse whether it's the actual letter x or the x being used for multiplication. So we want to avoid using the x. We also want to avoid using that multiplication dot. Some people often get that confused with a decimal point, and we don't want to be losing a decimal or adding a decimal anywhere into our problems. So we're going to avoid using those two multiplication symbols and either use the parentheses or use that asterisk symbol. Go ahead and try these 4 problems on your own. For number 1, you need to subtract 73, giving you d is equal to negative 44. Number 2, undo division with multiplication. Number 3, undo multiplication with division. And number 4, undo subtraction with addition. Last thing we're going to go over here is looking at a couple of word problems. A group of girls was surveyed about their phone habits. When we're looking at that sentence, nothing really mathematically relevant. 225, or 9/20ths, of the girls responded that they frequently talk on their cell phones while watching TV. A lot of math things to pay attention to. They give us the value of 225. They say 9/12ths, and then they mention, 9/20ths, and then they mention the word of, which if we remember from our word clues list, of means multiplication. Our goal then is to find out how many girls took the survey. When you are writing out these word problems for equations, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you know what your variable stands for. I'm going to use the variable g, and in this case, it's going to stand for girls who took the survey. So it's important to understand what our variable means so that we know where to place it within the equation. If you want to go through and do the step of actually defining the variable and saying what it's equal to so that you can see it visually and write it down, that's fine. You can totally do that. If you just want to take an extra couple of seconds and in your head mentally process what you're going to use for a variable and what it stands for, that's fine as well. But you really want to stop and think when you are writing these equations, what is the variable and what does it stand for? So in this case, now we're going to go ahead and start writing our problem. So it told us that 9/20ths of, so I need 9/20ths of the girls. The G is the girls in my situation, so 9/20ths of my variable is those 225 people who frequently talk on their phones while watching TV. So that's how we set up this problem. It's a multiplication problem. As we learned previously, in order to solve multiplication problems, we are going to divide. So I'm going to divide by 9/20ths on both sides of my equation. And when I do that, I'm going to get an answer of G is equal to 500. And then because it's a word problem, we want to include that label. So I'm going to say 500 girls surveyed. We want to be specific about what we are looking at as we answer the question. So when you're doing a word problem, define the variable, whether it's actually writing it down or thinking about it in your head. write the actual sentence, and then go ahead and solve it. I want you to go ahead and try this one on your own. Our variable here stands for the number of students at north side. When you are reading through the problem, it says 153 less than. Even though that phrase is split up, it still says less than. So we're using subtraction, and that 153 goes after the subtraction sign. Since you have a subtraction equation, you're going to solve using addition, and your final answer is 701 students. If you have questions about this or anything else from the lesson, please feel free to reach out and let me know.